So from our last break, we were talking about how this covenantal relation is being expressed in Romans 5, where Christ is covenantally saving us, just as Adam, through the covenant made, condemned us. Now, in our depravity, we are not depraved in ignorance. Sometimes, I think, people mean by depravity being deprived instead of depraved. You understand what I'm saying? So they believe, well, unsaved people are deprived of the truth. And what Romans 1 is teaching us is that they are not deprived of the truth. They suppress the truth in their unrighteousness. They are constantly, at every step, at every decision, they are constantly pushing against the truth. Sometimes they will even allow some of the truth to surface in order to support something else that might push the truth down even further. And this is the thing that we have to really look at as people that are dealing with philosophy and Christianity. There are men who wish to allow a little bit of the truth to surface so that they can push more of their unrighteousness on it later. And we want the full truth. So as we start looking at this, we need to start understanding not a deprived man, but a depraved man. This depravity is something that fills our whole self, not just our bodies, not just physical, but it depraves us down to our soul because we are tethered to Adam through covenant. Okay? Just like we are tethered to Christ in the new covenant in our righteousness. Right? And this righteousness, of course, is imputed to us. It is what we call alien righteousness. Maybe you've used those terms already. This is a phrase that I made it up. But it's a phrase that I think helps us understand what we're getting at. Ex pactum proceditur. That is Latin for from covenant we proceed. Okay? This is sometimes putting something in Latin, sometimes it makes you look smart, and that's cool. But what it really does is sometimes putting something in Latin really gets down to a point that English isn't as helpful in. And that's why you'll find in Charles Hodge. How many of you have read Hodge's Systematic Theology? All 3 volumes. Or some. Okay. You'll find that if you are completely unfamiliar with Latin, you miss a lot of what's going on there. Because the man loved Latin. But he loved Latin because a lot of the things he wanted to say had a sharper edge to the point when in Latin. He was also writing to people that he believed should know it. But this kind of helps us in a way to understand where we're coming from. And I'm going to start using some words. And at first, if you're not familiar with these words, they'll seem ugly, but we'll keep using them and see if we can start getting them in our vocabulary as we start talking about them. Metaphysically and epistemologically. Okay? How many are familiar with those words? You better be. All right. I had Alan in my intro to philosophy class and my logic class, so he needs to know those. All right. Epistemology. Can anyone tell me what that means? What was that?
Science of knowledge.
Okay, good. The study of knowledge. When someone is trying to figure out epistemology, they want to know how it is that we are able to know. Now that's a tough question. How is it that you're able to know? Some people say, well, I have a brain. Well, of course, that's not good enough. How does something that is physical and tangible create images that are completely intangible? That does not make logical sense. It's something that doctors still don't understand, and it's certainly something philosophers don't understand. How it is that something physical, tangible, can create things that are intangible. And so, when we're thinking about how it is we are able to think, we're thinking of epistemology. What about metaphysics? Your metaphysical self. What do you think that means? Well, physics, you know what that is, the physical. What does meta mean? Nice. Beyond. Yes, beyond the physical, right? So what is supporting us? What sustains us beyond the physical? In other words, does the physical world hold together because it was made in such a way, or is there something holding the physical world together that is beyond the physical? Even a better question is, how is it that you're able to have any context whatsoever? Have you ever thought about that? My sister-in-law just had a baby. No. Yes. I know what's happening in my family, honest. My sister-in-law just had a baby. My other sister-in-law is about to give birth to triplets. Triplets. So, did you know there's certain things that a baby does not need to be taught? They know how to eat immediately. They know how to cry. They even know, even fresh out of the womb, they know that when I cry, I get. Where are these components coming from? How is it that we are born into this world already within a context, knowing what to do before we even can really critically think about it? And how is it we can even exist within a context? Do you understand what I mean by context? I mean, this is what metaphysics wants to answer. Let's say, for the sake of argument, the evolutionists are right, that we're one huge accident. M theory is correct, and somehow through some what is it? I forgot what they call it. Some kind of explosion, not Big Bang, they have some other term for it. But according to M theory, everything came into being instantaneously because they know that can happen now. And then they call it inflation. You see, when everything came into being at first, everything was the size of our galaxy. Everything. So everything was compacted and small, and then everything went huge, and that's why everything's moving away from each other. And so there, everything's a big, we just boom came in, everything's expanding. So somehow, some way, after the Earth cooled, there was some kind of protein that was on the back of some kind of crater that, or some kind of rock that fell from the sky onto the Earth, and somehow, even after that impact, that protein survived and was able to start life. Because we know when you take some protein and just throw it as hard as you can on something, it begins life. And that all happened. And here we are. How is it that you have a context of knowledge? It's one thing to study how it is we are able to know. It's another thing to study how is it that you are within a context that even allows you to have this ability. That's metaphysics. It's pretty deep stuff. But that's what we're going to talk about today as we move on. The most important thing we can understand is that we proceed by covenant. Okay? When the Westminster Confession is talking about the condescension that God condescended to us, that it is covenantal. This is a covenantal condescension. The thing that is holding the infinite and the finite together is covenant. The thing that holds you before God, coram Deo, all the time before God, is covenant. Now this has more implications than we can even imagine, because we might still be thinking within our American context. The American context says you can compartmentalize every single thing. So it's like, so I have this relationship with God, and that's great. I love that relationship. I have a relationship with my boss. I have a relationship with my children. And these are different ways I interact, me, the autonomous human being, interact with the rest of the world. What I'm saying is, whatever it is that is holding you, that is keeping you in relation to God at all times, is the thing by which all reality is understood by us. Do you understand that? If you really believe, and this takes great faith, and it sounds like something you already believe, but the implications are far greater than we can imagine. If we really believe that God is the one holding the world together, then the thing that holds us in relation to Him is the stuff that God is using to create this world, that create this reality. Look at Colossians chapter 1. Look at verse 15. Speaking of Jesus Christ, who is the image, Jesus Christ, who is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of every creature. For by Him were all things created, that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created by Him and for Him. That should sound familiar from Romans. And He is before all things, and by Him all things consist. The Greek word there is substance. He holds it within His... he is holding it, the substance, together by Him. Okay? So we explain how a ceiling is able to stay suspended above us, because those of us that know physics understand that the mass of those little tiles there's not enough mass to break through those little rivets, or those little divots that are holding it together. If there was more mass there, they'd break through. But we know, because of physics, that they won't break through because there's not enough mass in those tiles. We know that these walls hold up this building through the kind of structure, the way the architectural build, the different substance that's made out of, and we know through physics that all that is why this building is holding together. And I'm telling you, that's how we explain it, but that's not what's holding this building together. What's holding this building together is the very hand of God. What is holding the molecules together that you're inhaling and exhaling, the molecules that holds your skin together and not drifting off into space, is the hand of God. We can talk about Einstein's theory of relativity, and it's a very interesting way of explaining how things work, that things don't have just a pull to them, but time and space is being bent, which brings things... which creates a divot in time and space, which leads things into it, and that's how we explain gravity. And that's very interesting, but really what's holding all things together, what's holding time and space together, what's pulling it down when there is mass, is the hand of God. We have earthly ways of explaining things, but don't think for a moment those are the things that are really holding it together. That there are laws that are holding it together. It's the hand of God that's holding it together. Be very careful, because in philosophy, what you will find is throughout time, people have tried to establish laws that are as basic as God. Remember Norman Geisler? The laws of logic are as uncreated as God. No. God is as uncreated as God. Those laws, even the laws of logic, are being held together by his fingertips. That if he desired, he could separate his hand and logic would become meaningless and we'd all go mad. He is holding it. So as we look at this, when we say that God is the one holding this world together in every aspect possibly known and unknown to us, when we say, how am I tethered to God? Whatever it is that condescension is, that's going to be what we proceed from to understand God and to understand our world. That is what we proceed from to understand God and to understand our world. Because if there's anything else that we are going to grasp onto other than what God has condescended to us with, we have made a new idol. We'll talk about those in a little bit. That's why this phrase, I think, is so important. Ex pactum proceditur. From covenant we proceed. And if this be the case, that God condescended to us by way of covenant, that before the beginning of time, before even creation, the Father and Son made a pact and made terms upon that pact, that these are the ones I will give you, and this is what you will do to take on the propitiation for their sins. And when you go down to earth, you will tell them that you are obeying. The God of heaven and earth, who is co-equal, co-eternal with God the Father, is going to obey. How is that possible? It's possible because they covenanted. So as we look at this, our very inception, before we were even physical beings, we were covenantally categorized. That has huge implications, because it's through that God has condescended to us. We are able to even be beings who are covenantal at nature. In our own nature, we are covenantal. We are fully dependent on God as covenantal beings. Imagine if you are not covenantal as a being, as a person. You don't have a covenantal nature. Then what is your nature? It becomes autonomous. Because logic and reason has no sense of derivation. There's no derivative in it. When you are a covenantal being, you are obligated. You have been addressed by God. This is something that Cornelius Van Til brings out quite a bit, that in being an addressee of God, you are obligated. This obligation is covenantal obligation, because there are promises made. There are conditions that need to be met. And it's not kind of covenant that we think of in contract, where we're saying both sides are on equal footing. We're thinking specifically of the kind of covenant that's spoken about both in the Old and New Testament, of one bringing the covenant to the other. Okay? One big misconception of covenant is the idea that, well, covenant is when two people have an agreement. And the word agreement makes you think that one person is saying, will you do that? And they, okay, I'll do it. If you do it, okay. And everyone's on the same standing. As if covenant is much like your cable bill, where as long as you bring in your money, the cable will continue to come in your home. That is not a covenant that we're talking about. We're talking about the kind of covenant where you are approached by the God of covenant, who says, this is what you will do, this is what I will do. This makes us fully dependent on the God who has addressed us. Yes, those are supposed to be 1, 2, and 3. Something was lost in the translation. We think and exist upon the conditions of God's covenant. Think about what I'm saying there. Your thinking and your existence is not based on autonomous reason or a neutral ground. Your thinking and your existence is reliant on something that has no neutrality in it at all. Let me make sure I'm being clear about neutrality. When I say neutral, you guys understand what I mean in that we're talking about something that has not a leaning one way or the other. Maybe some of you have gotten into a debate with your wife or something over, maybe you're watching TV, you're watching a movie, and you say, hey, that person was in that movie. Oh, no, they weren't. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that guy was in that movie. No, they weren't in that movie. And then so you have to go to a neutral place to find out. And where's the neutral place? Wikipedia, that's correct. And so you look at Wikipedia and think, oh, Wikipedia said this, so it must be true. Because it's Wikipedia. Why would they lie? And so there's this neutral place that doesn't care about you. It doesn't care about the fight you're having with your wife over whether this person was in another movie or not. It has no interest whatsoever. It's neutral. It's Wikipedia. So you go there, you see, oh, and you automatically believe, because why would Wikipedia lie? Because, well, you know, the head of Wikipedia said, okay, eventually these two are going to have a fight, and I have a personal interest in the guy winning. So can you put it in there that, you understand what I'm saying? That's not going to happen. They're neutral. And what I'm telling you is that our thinking and our being, our existence, has no neutrality in it. It is all biased to God, right? God is the one that we are proceeding from His commandment. Now the question is, how are we proceeding from His commandment? Are we proceeding as covenant breakers? Or are we proceeding from His commandments as covenant keepers? Like Van Til was really trying to show us, those are the only two kinds of humans that exist. Humans that are proceeding from the commandment of God as a covenant keeper, or people that are proceeding from the commandments of God as covenant breakers. So what are we? As looking at covenant, what does a covenant consist of? It consists of promises made in words. It consists in a purpose. It consists of commandments. It consists of will, right? When God came to Abraham and said, I will make you a great nation, God was not coming to Abraham saying, hey, would you like to be a great nation? If not, I have some other people that might be interested. He came to Abraham and said, this is what will happen. I will make you a great nation. And this is what you're going to do. And through you will come a seed. And who will that seed be? Christ, right? And through Christ, that's where the sonship goes. We are made associates. We are made a new church. We are made sons. I'm spending some time with my parents, and to help them out with some different things, and they're helping us out too, in very kind ways. They go to a very dispensational Baptist church, and so out of respect, we're attending that church as well until we move here. And the pastor wanted to have a debate with me about why I'm Reformed and why I'm not dispensational. And so we met in a neutral place, and because he wanted, I didn't want to. It's very painful to do it, just because what they want is a verse that says, John 3:87, the Reformed people are going to be right and the dispensational are going to be wrong. If you find that verse, then they'll believe you. But his big question was, how could you believe that you are not the church, that Israel is this church? I mean, they failed, and they rejected Christ when he came to establish his kingdom. They rejected him, and he had to leave, right? How can you believe that his kingdom was established, that the church has been from Abraham to now? That's impossible. And I showed him that verse in Genesis 17. That the seed, right? Through Abraham comes Christ. And we are the sons through Christ. We are direct descendants of Abraham, and physicality doesn't mean anything. What I asked him, I said, do you really think that God was really interested in human blood? That this was the forefront of his mind, to get Abraham with a human blood lineage, because God really cares about the human blood. God cares about our hearts, right? This is why God over and over told the people, I don't care if you're circumcised anymore. I want you to be circumcised in your hearts. No one's circumcised in the heart. You guys circumcise your skin, and you can't even circumcise your heart. That's what I want. And so when he goes to Abraham, he's saying, I want you to start a nation that from that will come the seed. From you will come that seed. And we will be literally adopted into this as sons. In that, when you take the branch and you put it into that tree or that vine, you actually get those roots. Those roots are yours just as much as they're won by the branch that came up right from that root. If you don't get those roots, you don't live. Does God care about your blood? Does God care about your heart? Was the covenant with Abraham so that there's a bloodline that through your blood you will be saved? Or through Abraham, is it that there is a spiritual line where circumcised hearts will come because of Christ? So I bring that up because those promises, if I always say, if you ever really want to know how is it that Reformed people think, read the book of Galatians, and then you either have to deny it or take it. But I know there's lots of, everyone has, but I say that because I think I'm pretty much with friends. I don't know where all your backgrounds are, but there is this covenantal system of our very foundation that exists, so that when God comes to Abraham with a covenant, we should know what covenant means by then, because we are constantly proceeding from covenant. You are either in Adam or in Christ, right? These are covenantal terms. In Adam or in Christ. Your head is Adam, your head is Christ. Which will it be? It is not that there's a third choice, and that in is hugely important to understanding your covenantal standing. Okay? All right. The Trinitarian image in the mind of man. You won't find this in a book yet, but maybe one day. Maybe one day. Metaphysically, in other words, beyond our physics, what is it that makes your physical possible? We are in covenantal relation to God. We are keepers or breakers. We are either in Adam or in Christ. That's where your existence begins.